Welcome back to Junction 119. This is Kellan.
And this is Casen.
And Casen, we are as back as the acolyte will not be. I appreciate everybody's patience. I am just gonna go ahead and get the I won't say the loud I'll say the quiet part out loud. I did change locations and jobs again in the month of August. I promise to you, Casen, and our listeners slash viewers, I am not going to be making a habit of doing that every August that we have this podcast. Okay, you hear me? You hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
It's really good to see you. I'll be honest. I am in my new location, which I'll leave vague. You know, if you know, you know. But uh, I'm a little. It is kind of staggering how much it looks exactly like the old one in terms of the
Yeah.
corner.
The corner looks very similar.
I'm a little blown away at how well it looks, and it's not really until I'm queuing up our show now that I'm seeing it. But pretty well done. The banners are in place. I didn't really have. I kind of wanted it to at least look like a decent, seamless transition, but it's good to see you, my friend. It's good to see all of you listeners. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your love, support. We cherish you. How are you, Casen? We're by the time it's Saturday, so it's the end of a week. How you doing?
Good, good. Yeah, it's been quite a while since we've talked. There's been a lot that that we have to catch up on. And I'm looking forward to a great show here with you, brother.
Sounds great, brother. We are gonna stick to mainly football. I do have of the weeks on the docket if you have any, which we usually do now that it's officially football season. Apologies that we didn't give you like an actual formal NFL preview. There was like a week in there where we could have, and then ultimately I think I sent you a message, Case, and that was like, look, the Steelers nor Browns are winning the Super Bowl, so let's just table this discussion. And I think there's something more fun for just jumping straight into the NFL conversation, especially with, now that we're 1 week in. But we're going to start in college football and then we're going to move into pro. We'll do other weeks and then we'll kind of close things out, acknowledging things along the way. And you might get some pop culture in here as well. But first things first, it's going to be Saturday before everyone hears this. There was news out of the Pac-12 literally on Thursday morning, bro. What
Hmm.
was it? It was something that you've speculated about,
Yeah,
actually.
so we have talked a lot about conference realignment during the whole duration of the show, and obviously, if you are aware of of sort of the status of the conferences now, you know there is a former Power Five conference that currently has two teams in it. That's the Pac-12. It's currently the Pac-2 quote.
The
And
powerful
it
two.
yeah with just Washington State and Oregon State, and it was announced just yesterday that they are now adding for the I believe not next year but the year after, so the beginning 26-27 school
July
year.
1st, 2026.
Yep, they will be adding the four Mountain West teams: Fresno State, Boise State, San Diego State, and Colorado State. So they will be joining Wazoo and Oregon State in attempting to rebuild the Pac-12 brand. We talked a lot about this particular thing, especially because those two schools in the Pac-12 have a scheduling agreement with the Mountain West, and so we talked a lot about how they were going to probably poach some schools from there. And I think all these schools make sense. I mean, Boise and Fresno have been the two best teams in the conference for the last couple of years. San Diego State's usually always pretty good, and Colorado State is average, but I think that they're getting better. They was Jay Norvell, I think, is there now.
Well, either way, I
I
mean,
believe.
either way, whenever you look at a move like this, you have to think about it in terms of all sports, right? No matter
Right.
what way you slice it, these are four very attractive, very good schools that bring good pedigree to the entire conference, right?
100%. And even when you talk about all sports, San Diego State basketball, men's basketball,
Oh yeah,
just went on a tremendous run last year in the Final Four, and so that's huge for that basketball program. And I love the regionalness of it. They're keeping it on the West Coast. I mean, Colorado's a little bit more inward, but I mean, Colorado was in the old Pac-12, so
now, my immediate
but
question to you, my friend, is you might if you're out there listening to us and you get our fresh take on this is very fresh news. I mean, this was as of Thursday, and it's Friday that we're recording this. We had a little bit of discussion in various group texts that we were in. Obviously, they need 2 more members to become an 8-team league, an 8-school league, and being recognized as a conference.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Just to touch on it.
Go ahead. Yep.
They need 8 teams as a conference to remain an FBS conference.
Yes,
that's a legal rule that they were allowed a certain period of time where they can like rebuild. But I would imagine they would have to get them to join in that 26 school year as well.
They have
to. So they're going to be looking for 2 teams. So I assume your question is, where do we go from here?
Exactly. Right? Who would be the other 2 or more that you would bring into the new Pac-12, which, by the way, I would almost literally rename the Pac-8 because they were. I mean, if that happens, it's almost worth it.
I would agree that would probably be the way to go. Or you know, if they can get 4 more, the Pac-10 again,
bring back the Pac-10.
But here's the thing that someone needs to reference, that because it's Washington State and Oregon State are in this particular situation, they have a ton of money because of the way that like they are now getting the sole amount of money from the Pac-12 media deals and stuff, and sort of because of everybody left, they individually kind of have a lot of money to spend to get schools to come back or to join the conference to rebuild it.
Oh, he said magic words. He said, "Come back."
Yeah. Yeah. So they because of the scheduling agreement that they made with the Mountain West, which they kind of had to do, I guess, to get like a schedule. But because of that agreement alone, they now have to pay the Mountain West $43 million for poaching 4 schools from the conference.
Interesting. I did not know that.
So, yeah. So in addition to all the exit fees that these schools have to pay, the Pac-12 has to pay Mountain West almost $50 million for stealing their teams.
Right.
So the Mountain West is going to get pretty rich here pretty soon, which is good for them. But so here's the question: is
the domino effect makes me think, if you're the Mountain West, do you approach South Dakota State, North Dakota State? About coming up to FBS
So that's the thing, is
the domino effect.
Obviously, logically, the solution would be to go to, like, the easiest solution would be to go poach 2 more Mountain West schools, and then there's your 8.
Boom.
Because I mean, just logistically, I don't know what the other options are, because I would say try and get Stanford and Cal back, but that's not a realistic option because they're already a part of the ACC. The exit for them to get out of the ACC agreement is just not feasible.
You're not going to, and you're not realistic. I saw some people floating that around too. You're not going to realistically, with all the logistics that go into joining a new conference, you're not realistically going to convince them to say, "Oh, let's spend 2 years in the ACC and come back to come back to it." Let's just be honest. On paper, is a less attractive Pac-12. We're not going to do that.
What I would say is keep that door open and be willing to invite them back.
Yeah.
Depending on how the Florida State, depending on how the lawsuit ends up, and depending on what the status of that conference is in a couple years. Like, keep the door open, let them let them know, hey, door's always open if you ever want to come back and be more regional on the West Coast.
Right. Which I'm going to tell you right now, the one thing, just within my line of work and everything that I'm already hearing chatter about, the travel is going to wreak havoc on everyone. Yeah. And it's not, and honestly, I don't care what conference you're part of out of the big ones that have had the realignments, rather. No one's immune to the travel. You're going to have some sort of ridiculous travel to make this work, no matter what. Just some more than others, right? My immediate thought was go for the Nevada teams. UNLV and Nevada were my immediate. Well, yeah, they're essentially West Coast. I heard some people floating around some Texas teams like your UTSAs, maybe your UTEP. Personally, I think you stay away from Texas just because. Yeah, if you're trying to make something a bit more regional, I would bark up the tree of an actual more of a West Coast-ish, mountainous.
I would even say
market first.
Like I would even say Hawaii, could be an interesting, fun option.
Hawaii is kind of a no-brainer off the top of my head. Yeah.
They don't really have the resources, I think, because if they're trying to rebuild the Pac-12 into something of a Power 5 conference again, I don't think Hawaii is the program to do that.
Well, at least
but
they aren't right
now. I do think, right, at least right now, along with the fact of it's just like they are a Mountain West program. Like the vibes are there. I think definitely UNLV could definitely be there. I mean, with all of the resources that they have in Las Vegas now, between the ability to use the Allegiant Stadium, the ability to use T-Mobile Arena for, big basketball games if they need to. I think that definitely is a huge asset to have. And Nevada, historically very good basketball program at times. You remember the teams that the Must Bus had there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those would be no-brainers. I'm totally there with you. That was my first guess. If you're going to poach two more Mountain West programs, those are two programs
barking up that same tree, my guy. Has there been any chatter in the Vegas area of like, hey, among that you've even heard? It's pretty new, so probably not.
I have not. I haven't heard of anything regarding the additional teams.
Okay.
But again, following the trickle down, I'm there with you in that the Mountain West now, the only solution they have to rebuild their numbers would be to try and get some teams from the FCS level to come up. I mean, this is the perfect opportunity. I know that they enjoy just being wrecking balls in the FCS, but this is the opportunity to just in one swoop get the Dakota teams. You can get maybe Idaho again to come back up. I saw something just today about
there's sorry.
Yeah, there's some kind of grassroots movement amongst the supporters of Sacramento State to try and get them to move up.
Sacktown would be cool. That would be cool.
So there are options. I mean, I think the Mountain West, it losing, teams like Boise and Fresno hurt them a lot. I mean, at least from a football perspective, and it definitely brings them a lot closer down to the levels of, Conference USA and stuff. So they're not quite what they were, which was, because Boise was always, a really, really good team that can contend in bowl games and stuff. And so
you talk about the weirdest football history of the past probably 20 years, Boise State, man. There were times when it looked like they were a slam dunk, like Big 12, caliber team. And then, I remember, they joined the Mountain West and then TCU leaves and it's like, well, snap, now we're here. It's strange, but I think thinking about this in a more positive light, one, I'm happy the Pac-12 is doing this. I'm not happy for the Mountain West. However, in a world where everyone is seemingly trying to move their status up, these teams will move to the Pac-12 with a new Pac conference. You got teams that hopefully you can lure up to the Mountain West, which will flourish as well because the Mountain West is still an attractive conference name. Now the question becomes, does it become less attractive with these four exiting it? Absolutely. But if you can weather the storm here, I really think that there's a universe in which no one has to totally look awful. You know what I mean?
Right.
No one gets too diminished here.
Let's just say hypothetically that the teams joining the Mountain West are North Dakota State, South Dakota. Let's say South Dakota State and maybe Montana State. Like those are all really good programs with a lot of history and a lot of winning in the FCS level. And that adds a lot of really good competition right next door to Wyoming.
It does.
And so with all of those programs in the same conference, that moves sort of the regionality of that conference a little bit further, towards the center, towards Wyoming and Montana and the Dakotas.
Truly and the Mountain West.
I think from a betterment of the game perspective, that will do wonders for that area as far as reaching out and improving the culture of football in those in those mountain states that
College
don't have
sports,
what?
not just
Well,
football, college sports.
true,
I
true.
get what you
I
mean.
guess,
I get what
yeah,
you mean.
yeah.
It's just
I
so all of these alignments are being made because
yeah,
of football, but I cannot sit here and pretend like we cannot ignore every sport here. You know,
100%, hundred
that's
percent.
all I
You're totally
mean.
right.
That's the only reason I
Um,
chime in there.
but it will improve all of college athletics in a region where there's not really professional sports.
Right.
Like they don't really have pro teams in anything in that whole area.
What do you mean?
And
It's
so it's
Broncos country. Let's ride. That's
and
it.
so
It's
it's going
Denver.
to
That's it.
it's just yeah, it's going to deepen the amount of involvement and focus on all of college athletics in that area, which I think is great for everybody. So
I ultimately find
uh
that honestly, this was one of those things where after a year ago, I saw what I kind of interpreted as nothing but kind of bad news in terms of like the whole realignment. This was a bit of news that hit me, and I was like pleasantly like, oh, that's nice. Like it was a breath of fresh air. I was like, okay, so they're really going to try to do this. Now, if you're a Mountain West fan that's not one of these four, I totally understand, but I really think that there's an avenue here in which you can weather the storm and add some teams. Even if you got to make your squad, like the conference has to become a little geographically weird. But the reality is, I think every Mountain West fan would have told you a year ago that this was the next plausible thing that was probably going to happen if the pack was going to survive
yeah, no, 100%. I
as
mean,
a brand.
and I get that, like, vertically speaking, I don't think it's really doing anybody favors when you're talking about schools like San Jose State in North Dakota.
Right.
Like that's a very, like, vertically it's not Stanford and Miami, but it's like still very far away.
It is.
So just something to at least I think consider. Or I mean, even North Dakota and Hawaii, like that's a very drastic difference there. But
It is. So all in all, I mean, I've said what I've wanted to. I am curious to see ultimately who the at least two more members are going to be, because I'm confident that they're going to be able to lure two more before that
yeah,
deadline of July, before July 1st,
I
2026. I mean,
just throwing out what I've seen, like people suggest or whatever. People were suggesting Tulane. I think that's kind of ridiculous. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
I
obviously we know what the ACC did, but if you're the Pac-12, adding a school in New Orleans doesn't, like, help.
no, but
But
right, and especially when you're the Pac-12 in the sense of you're a diminished Pac-12. I mean, let's just be honest, you are.
yeah,
So it's the influx of resources isn't quite going to be that, but I can just totally see like their last two are going to be someone who makes perfect sense and someone like a Tulane, someone who makes no sense
yeah.
at all. And it's like, you know what? Why not? In a world where it's just college football 25, any conference goes now. Let's just, who knows? Like I even jokingly said, watch someone from the East Coast just join that conference for the heck of it.
I mean, the only other schools regionally that I think would even kind of make sense, as far as like the furthest east I would go, would be New Mexico State,
Yeah,
maybe.
the New Mexicos were tossed out there.
Yeah.
Both of them. I mean, New Mexico, the Lobos, and the Aggies of New Mexico
Hmm.
State. So, um, we could see that. I really think that if you're the Pac-12, you have some time to really weigh your options and, quite frankly, put your pitch together for whoever
Hmm.
your first choice is. I have no doubt that there's a a war board in a war room somewhere. Uh, like Charlie and Always Sunny with the connected images, the meme.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's some sort of image there. There's some sort of thing up there that says, okay, our first choice is this, and this, and it's in an order, for whatever reason. You
Now,
know,
here's something that I would do. It won't happen because they'll say no, but I would do everything in my power to try and get Gonzaga in as a basketball only member.
right? I mean, if only you could, right?
Or
Um,
I guess everything else as well too. I mean,
yeah,
as just a
and
non-football
and
member.
what is really interesting is that in all of the realignment, it is very fascinating that we have yet to see any kind of real movement of like sports specific changes like that from anyone major. I'm
Hmm.
sure with the way the contracts are with these, you got to be all or nothing, especially like so goes football, so goes everything else, simply because of the way the TV contracts have to be and the way the broadcast scheduling and That stuff's divvied up in a lot of schools, and every conference is different. But in a world where the Big East exists as as a basketball only school or conference rather, I'm a little surprised that we haven't seen movements like that. But that what you just said, Casen, strikes me as like hypothetically, if that were to happen, that would probably trigger a whole set of new realignments that would get a little crazy, and you would get to the point where you forget who's in what conference for what. And for the organization of the school, I'm sure contractually it's going to be like, okay, we would never do that
Now,
because we can't do that.
would it be the weirdest thing? Like obvious, like if you want to talk about off the wall bananas idea, football only member UConn joining the Pac-12.
Banana land. Well, I mean, it makes more sense again for them to join the ACC. I actually said to someone like 2 weeks ago, it wasn't about this, obviously, but it was about something else regarding realignment. It almost makes more sense to inject, like UConn could become an ACC full member right now and probably run both basketball immediately. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's probably, I mean, run basketball. I mean, even if they weren't as good at football, like who cares? Like immediately they're the best men's basketball team, women's basketball team.
As far as football goes, I mean, they're good. I mean, they're definitely wouldn't be the worst team in the ACC.
No, I mean, and so them joining a football conference is because I think right now they're still an independent. As of this taping, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, because they're in the Big East for everything else, but I would imagine they're probably not thrilled about that. Considering, I think they're holding out for the ACC, and the ACC doesn't want them yet. I think what they're doing. If I had to guess.
Well, in a world where you can do things like that in video game, like one school I always have joined the ACC is West Virginia. Might do a little bit of an experiment soon and put UConn in there and see what happens. But that's just football. But regardless, that's kind of our thoughts on the Pac-12, the new look Pac-12 situation. Let us know yours. We're literally 2 years away from this being like effective in a sense of we'll be talking about the Pac-12 beyond just being two teams. So we'll see what happens between then and now, and we'll cover it. Shifting to regular college football, I will say that we're 3 weeks in now, 4 if you count like week 0. I think actually no. By the time you're listening to this show, week 3 is like upon us, correct?
Yeah.
So we're 3 weeks.
Week 3 has already started. I mean, what is it? I think Arizona State is the first 3-0 team.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this week, like literally this week when you're hearing us, is a pretty weak week actually as far as matchups go. But I think it's also because of how insane October is going to be, especially with the new realignments. I mean, a lot's been said about October 12th alone, just with like the matchups there are that day.
The thing that we have to realize and remember with conference realignment is that a lot of the non-conference matchups are going to just sort of diminish in quality because a lot of the big time matchups are just going to happen during the conference schedule now.
Think about what's a conference game.
I mean,
now.
it just means that for a team in a conference like the SEC or the Big Ten, you're going to schedule a ton of weak out of conference matchups because if you're playing 5 ranked teams in your conference schedule, you don't want to schedule another top 15 team in your non-conference.
I'm glancing at a few of the matchups for this weekend. Don't scoff at this one, but this one's at 12:45 tomorrow. Boston College, number 24, at number 6 Missouri. That's not a bad matchup.
It depends on how good BC actually is.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it could be fool's gold there, but it could be a good game.
Could be fool's gold. I guess the one thing we should talk about from this past week that's been an ongoing story, the first major upset we had of the college football season was NIU over Notre Dame this past week.
Yeah.
It is worth talking about though now going into the second week because what is pretty cool is that NIU's head coach, who off the top of my head I don't know his
Thomas
name.
Hammond.
Say it again, Casen.
Thomas Hammond.
Thank you. Apologies.
His name, yeah.
Apologies, coach. He was on other podcasts and things this week where he essentially said that he actually just spoke with Marcus Freeman about how what they saw that worked against Notre Dame. which I thought was pretty cool. You know, you just don't hear about something, especially him being so public about it. But
Hmm.
the win's the win, right? And you know that happens. Our alma mater, Bowling Green, looked really good against Penn State. You know, it was actually a solid week for, say, you know, teams like that in the MAC. But
Yeah,
uh,
I had a bit of a theory because
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, it's just I'm wondering if part of, because I mean, Bowling Green, that Bowling Green Penn State game was actually really exhilarating
that was
because
great.
we
Yeah,
were in it the entire game,
yeah.
and up until the very end. Uh,
Between
and
my
so
friends
part of,
from college and my friends from home, my phone
yeah,
was just obliterating like its ringtone, and it got to the point where I had to like hide alerts because I was like, look, I was actually like working basically. And I was like, I can't do this. But anyway,
but I was wondering if NIU was watching that game in the locker room, and if seeing that sort of maybe got their confidence up to play Notre Dame, if they were like, oh, you know, MAC represent, maybe, you know, we can do it too, kind of thing.
well, maybe
Just a
not
thought,
directly,
but
maybe not directly in the locker room because that's just there's no time to do that with the warm ups. But what I will say is this: I I think there's something to be said, especially within the transfer portal, especially at times where, say what you will, but I really like. I only say this because I'm one of the people who really welcomes Nick Saban on College Game Day now. I think he's onto something these last couple of weeks where he's talked about the one thing you lose with the transfer portal era is this team's not cohesively together. I mean, you don't have the same guys coming through like you did before. And that is, and where you have the disadvantage is the little small things, the chemistry, the things like when your back is against the wall, you can rely on this person to do that. I'm not saying that that's necessarily the reason why Notre Dame lost, but what I am saying is that complete unknown in terms of chaos that you're going to see more of. Um, it welcomes the possibility of an NIU going into Notre Dame and winning almost like it was nothing. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was close throughout, but I mean, they were in it the entire time. They held Notre Dame to below 20 points. I mean, and this is a team that I made the comment. Someone said something to the effect of, or in my circle, I should say, the Notre Dame team that beat Texas A&M the week prior. I'm like, yeah, but that may or may not be even a good win. We have no idea yet. You know,
yeah.
like we have no clue if that's even an impressive win. As far as I'm concerned, Notre Dame's average to bad, basically based on what I've seen. So, and when I
Yeah,
say that,
I
I mean they're
mean,
beatable, right?
no,
Um,
100%. I mean, and I
yeah,
think that's the thing is that you, there are a lot of questions about Riley Leonard, and like you were saying, it, yeah, I mean, Riley Leonard transfers in from Duke. Who knows how, you know, connected he is with the receivers and the O line, and there's a lot. It is very risky to have your entire team sort of hinging on the chemistry of one guy
right.
that transfers in.
I mean, it's not, and even just one guy to one thing. I mean, how many times in the past have we seen teams just take over games? Like
Yeah,
a team knows they're better on paper, has played together. You got guys do this, and you know whether I mean I'm just using them as an example. How many times do you know for a fact Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be open here? XYZ, same guys in the same spots. We've had several years to work on this. And if we need points, like we know we need 7, we need 14 to win this game. We need to put this game away. We need to put this team out of the game, like away from us. I know he's going to be there. That you only get with reps and repetition. And someone transferring in, a group of guys transferring in, whether that's offense or defense, they're just not going to have that because they don't have the longevity with each other yet. And that's a situation where even another year together would be better. And so I don't know. I don't know. I think that's just one element of where that happens. Part of it is just the chaos of college football that we see every year, and the any given Saturday. Like there's a lot of different factors. Maybe Notre Dame didn't play as hard. It's their home opener. Notre Dame, Northern Illinois is obviously going to play really hard, and all of that. But it is a factor. It's just like I don't know. I think you're going to see more teams that don't have the it factor to just be able to say, okay, let's just put them away because we can. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm uncertain that we can do this.
Now, so here's the thing, that this boils down to. With this 12-team playoff, there's a lot more options.
Mhm.
However, Notre Dame being an independent complicates that. In that, we've talked before about how, Notre Dame undefeated, guaranteed lock for the 12-team playoff. A one loss, let's say they win out. A one loss Notre Dame whose losses to NIU, can they still get in? I mean, can you justify putting them in if, say, Texas A&M isn't good, and so
Mhm.
their biggest win isn't really that big, and they have a loss to a MAC program?
I
Like, can you
I
can you
mean,
say that they deserve to be in?
any other given year, I would say. I mean, it's impossible to really thoroughly answer that question how I want to on September 13th, 14th of the season. But
Yeah.
I will answer your question by saying this. On another year where they have other big matchups and they go undefeated, you almost can. Now, do you put them in at the 5? Probably not. But are they in the 12? Probably. Their schedule's so weak this year that I think that loss really hurts them a lot. Now, one of the things that you and I literally discovered since our last show, our preview with friend of the show Matt for the college football season, was our last show. Uh, that Notre Dame, most years, as long as they're independent, has a little bit of an unfair advantage. If they go undefeated and they sit there at the 5 seed, they can't be higher than the 4. What we didn't really realize until it was explained to me via various sources is that Notre Dame, if they ever have an undefeated season, is going to be sitting there at the 5 seed. They're going to play the top group of 5, so they have a 5-12 to start. So in
Mm.
one win, they're already one win. They're already one game away from the national championship. Um, What's funny is the second that I heard about that situation and I heard it was a former athletic director at Notre Dame that helped put the system together, I was like, now that is a parting gift. At the same time, Notre Dame's never going to have this situation. They always lose a game like again to NIU or something like that. I was like, yeah, that would be fun if that wasn't just a fictional thing that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, you're telling me that all they got to do is that? Well, they're never going to do that. So that's fine. They're always going to lose like their home opener to some sort of MAC team or Marshall or someone like that. So like I'm joking, but I'm serious. Like the pressure amounting that much, it's like they're never going to do that. And if they do, I'll eat my words. But even if that happens, can't you see a situation? This is what I would love to see about that situation. Can't you see a situation, Casen, where they play a schedule like this year? They go completely undefeated. They win. That they're a 5 versus a 12. They win that game by whatever. They blow that out, and then they get absolutely trounced in the semifinal game. Can't you see that?
Yeah.
Because they didn't really play anyone in a year. That's what Notre Dame did that year with Metateo and that team. They went undefeated and they got destroyed by Alabama. Because when it came right down to it, that was the difference between them and the big dog. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry, my mic might have cut out there, even if it didn't. Uh, so that being said, getting my train of thought back. Yeah, it's a hypothetical. It's a fun hypothetical, but um, I answered your question with a long tangent and basically saying, could I still see it this year? Yeah, but their schedule's so weak that your guess is as good as mine come committee time. You know what I mean? But I also am not
Yeah.
sitting here convinced that this team is going to go undefeated from even here. So
Also true. I mean,
everybody be like, no, you can beat them. Well, we can beat them. Like,
yeah. I mean,
kidding me?
that's very true. That's very true. I mean, and they do play USC at the end of the year,
Yep.
which could be fairly good.
I will say that the result last week is literally the only thing that made me want to almost get Peacock and watch Here Come the Irish. If you're not familiar, yeah, there's like a hard knock style show on Peacock right now that's like the innards of Notre Dame football. It's called Here Come the Irish, and my goodness, nothing made me want to potentially watch it more. Anyway, I didn't expect to spend that amount of time, but that was the story from last weekend, and we were talking about. I just want to make sure we touched on it.
Yeah, and so just some other, I guess, headlines to get into from college football that we've
You want
missed
to
so
talk about
far.
your boy Dion?
Yeah, Dion has a problem.
What's the
I mean,
problem, Casey?
we saw week 1. They barely squeak out a win over North Dakota State, in which we all thought they could easily lose, and they almost did, like we all thought. And then they get absolutely annihilated last week by Nebraska.
By Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes. Nebraska quarterback Dylan Raiola, who cosplays as Patrick Mahomes.
He really does, and it's funny.
So I'll take this clip as the two for Nebraska. Looks good. I mean,
Yeah.
they might not be there right now, but Dylan Raiola looks really good. He looks like the guy they need. And so you give me 2 more years of that and the recruits and transfers that come in with that, Nebraska could be a really good program. I mean, it's Lincoln, Nebraska. So I don't know if you want to go there. But
let's be real. 4 words. Matt Rule is good. I just can't. It was a good hire for that situation. He was dominant at Baylor. It didn't quite work in the NFL. His bread and butter is college football. Nebraska, he specializes in getting kids like him to go to places like Lincoln, Nebraska. I thought that was a good hire when they made it. Give him some time. You've given him some time. This is just a start of what they could be. This is the first time I'm looking around and I'm like, oh no, they could contend for the Big Ten here. And at a time when we're very much looking for your number 3 to 4 in the Big Ten, because Wisconsin's not quite there yet.
Yeah.
At least under Luke Fickell, they haven't quite gotten to what they've been in the past. Who knows? It could be Nebraska. But so that was an expected outcome. I think shifting gears to Colorado, because I don't want to even sit here and say I've been the Deion defender on the show. I've been a straight up fan since they hired him. What I will say about this season, because I had some time to really think in what's transpired in the first couple of weeks of the season. You and Matt were talking about, right? And I remember on the last show, you even said well, I know Kellan, you're a Deion guy. I was like, I don't know if I'm a Deion guy, but the one thing I will say is what I'd be worried about this year is you need to see progress and you need to see building, because the reality of the situation is he's still in year 2 of what would be a regular build of a program. And you do start to wonder, if you're a Colorado fan, and any Colorado fans, please, I don't know any directly, but I would love to hear from some. Is there a genuine fear that this is all for his kids? Is that for the Sanders kids? It's all for, I mean, obviously you're going to get great players like Travis Hunter that come through, but you could be left in a potentially worse situation on the other end of this, I suppose, which I suppose Colorado fans will be like, well, we were winless. I don't know if it's any worse than that, but whatever. But I don't know. Does dragging your feet and not really building the program and just trying to make a splash and spectacle, is that what you want versus an actual built program? It's hard to say right now, which is why they need to improve from 4 wins a year ago. I mean, they really need to. If that's all that's my thoughts on it.
No, I mean, I definitely agree.
This could end very badly, is what I'm saying.
Right.
The whole Deion at Colorado thing could end very badly for at least Colorado,
Oh, 100%. Because
you know what I mean?
This is the thing, is the team does not look better. The offensive line is just as bad. I mean, you have Shadur and Travis Hunter, and that's it. And they're both gone after this year.
Right.
So you're looking at, what is this program without those two? And at this point, this team probably has 4 wins again. Maybe. I mean, they already are in the Big 12, which is, I mean, not going to be easy. I mean, because there are a lot of really solid programs in the Big 12. And so, I mean, we'll see. I mean, my big thing is, if they go ahead and go 4-8 again, and Shadur leaves, Travis leaves, why is Deion staying? He won 8 games in 2 years, and his son's gone, his favorite player's gone. He doesn't want to stick around to rebuild around somebody who's not his son.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like you really hope that this wasn't like a flash in the pan situation, and that he really does care about trying to build something there at Colorado. Right now, it's hard to say one way or the other. And in that particular instance, I think that's valid criticism. And it's not a good look when you're saying certain people can't come in to press conferences and stuff. I mean,
I'll just say I'm not hating. I think Dion, the personality of Dion as a player is hilarious. It's amazing and all that stuff. But I think as a coach, I think he got too. I think his head got too big at Jackson State, thinking that it was him as being the reason for the success. But it was literally just the fact that he happened to get a couple really high quality players to want to play for him as like part of a meme brand thing. And he thought that it was like, oh, I'm actually doing a good job.
Well,
no, it was
not
two
only
dudes
that,
who had no business being in the FCS, just
right.
dominating severely lesser talent.
Right. And it's not just even FCS. I mean, the HBCU level, I mean, you never know. I mean, but the competition level, even from top tier FCS, is not quite the same. So
Yeah.
you take some of those kids that he had at Jackson State, of course they're going to go like undefeated. I mean, they're winning every game by 45 points. I mean, of course, when you jump to the FBS level, that's not going to be the case.
And
yeah.
I think the thing that you're seeing here is, I mean, Dion rolls into Boulder last year. I got my luggage and it's Louis. Who? Nobody's going to Boulder to play for him anymore.
Oh, right. I mean,
I think everybody's fully aware. Everybody's fully aware that he's apparently a snake oil salesman, and nobody they had one major problem, and it was the offensive line, and they didn't get anybody.
Right. And
you are sitting here and telling me that you cannot pay 300-pound dudes from Iowa to come play for you?
Well, hang on a second. Where I disagree is I don't think there's enough evidence yet to say that he's a snake oil salesman. Let's see how the rest of this year goes. I think that
I'm more so saying that they are fully aware they can't trust what he says.
Right.
Because based on everybody, on the amount of transferred out players that have been talking about him in such a negative light, recruits know that they can't trust anything he says.
There comes a time when like you might want to check yourself in terms of the amount of people who have left the building who aren't going to be saying good things about you. Almost a general tactic in life. It's like, if you want to move on, that's one thing, but you best make sure people are moving on for the right reasons, and it's not particularly you. And so when it comes to bringing new people in, you got to show them that investment. And yeah, I was just kind of saying it's hard even right now for, say, someone to want to go and play there with the idea that you're going to finish your career there, and to say that you're going to last for as long as his sons are there, but who's to say he's going to be there afterwards? And you need to show a real commitment to the actual coaching, and show that this all just isn't a bit, because the more this goes, the more it's looking like this is just a bit,
Yeah. I mean,
a stunt to get your kids drafted. I mean, I hope 100%. I hope that's not what this is, but the longer this goes on, the more it looks like that.
Yeah. And I mean, just as an anecdote, I saw something, about how when Shadur scores the touchdown, the band can't play their own fight song because Dion makes the loudspeaker PA play Shadur's SoundCloud rap song instead of the band fight song, which to me, I am just baffled that the university president would be okay with that.
Well,
they signed the keys to the entire university over to Dion.
Well, exactly.
And they are going to pay a price for that from the fan base if this ends as badly as we think it could.
Well, right, and I guess what I would sit here and say, I guess we all, not just you, but I guess we all would be surprised what people will sign over for money or status or whatever, wherever the dollars come from, right? That's where I'm trying to. I don't know if I'm doing as good a job at explaining this as in my head. To make it less complicated. That actually didn't surprise me that much, especially when in the days of when, say, PJ Fleck was in the MAC, and just row the boat and stuff
fair.
like that.
That's fair. I mean,
and what I'm saying is every school is guilty of of giving a lot of autonomy out of whether it be coaches or professors or something along those lines of, well, if a place didn't have the best or have, I don't say the best, an established tradition or culture before, am I going to fault them for doing something? In that particular instance, maybe it's not the best look for a rap song to be playing for one of your players rather than the fight song of the university. Maybe not the best thing.
No, I'm not even just saying like to me, like if I mean
I
I'm not
agree
even
with
just
you,
saying like a
basically.
rap song. I'm saying the fact that like it's literally Shadur's
Well, that's what I
song.
mean. Yeah,
That's like
it's clearly something you're doing
who
for the
knows?
spectacle of like
Yeah.
what this is.
I haven't heard it. I don't know if it's good, but my guess is it's gonna be bad. Like
But
I mean
here's my thing, man. I'm looking at their schedule right now. I'm just trying to see. Okay, they play Kansas State at home on October 12th, that big day with all the matchups. If they're down 42 to nothing entering the fourth quarter and Shadur gets a touchdown and that rap song plays instead of the fight song, that'll tell you all you got to know about this. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you can almost clip that. I mean, what like at some point everyone's going to look up at the scoreboard and kind of say and say they haven't won since then, which I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to win a couple of games here. I think they'll beat Colorado State. They got Baylor, Central Florida before that Kansas State game. We'll see. I'm not going to sit here and predict their whole schedule. I'm not going to do that. What I am going to say is at some point, the scenario I just laid out and the picture I just painted is not going to sit right with a lot of people.
But I
all.
will say though, no matter how it turns out, I do think the Dion experience probably improved the program status of Colorado.
Yeah.
I mean, they were winless before he got there, so any win is a win.
Right.
But the thing is that because of all the eyeballs on the program, whoever comes in after Dion, I think it will be a more desirable job because
right. And I'll say
there's been eyeballs on them for 2 years now, so everybody knows about the program.
You know what I genuinely hope happens? I hope we're sitting here in 3 years, Dion's still there and they're going to the playoff. I'm serious. I really hope that is what happens. But
yeah.
Any other lingering stories that you've been wanting to?
Yeah,
been like, oh, I'm waiting for it. Let's hear it. Oh boy,
Florida State.
Florida State.
Florida State is a disgrace. I'm going to talk to the Seminole fans out there.
Oh boy,
you deserve this. You spent weeks talking about lawsuits, about getting shut out of the playoff, and what happens? You immediately just completely forget how to play football. I mean, you lose to Georgia Tech in Ireland. You lose to Boston College. Like, what are we doing? Your phony outrage over the fact that you just couldn't get over the true statement of why would we let in the junior varsity squad to get boat raced by Georgia, like, or whoever. Like, yeah, I mean, no duh. And so along with the fact that we totally saw how that Florida State team ended up playing in their bowl game. So you deserve this. I mean, I liked what they were building there. I thought they could have been really good.
Are you sure?
Yes, I did like what they were building, but it seems like the loss of talent from last year is just too much to get over, and they are a shell of themselves. I mean, Mike Norvell is a good coach. I don't understand how this happened, but here we are. They're 0-2.
Listen, they're
and
0-2.
I don't for a program like that that's so obsessed with we got to go to the SEC because we're better than the ACC. No,
Well,
You need to go to the American. You need to go to Conference USA.
There's so many Miami Hurricanes fans who are just sitting here saying, Casen, cook them alive, do it.
There is no fan base in the ACC more delusional than the Seminole fans. These Seminole fans are still they're still like operating off of the high they got from winning championships in the 80s. Like the
90s too.
I mean, it's 30 years later, guys. I mean, welcome to reality. It's not like I mean, also just from like a university perspective, like this is what you get for shoving out, you know. I don't know. Whatever.
Jimbo. Were you about to say Jimbo Fisher?
It's not like Jim. I mean, but like the point stands. Like it's just, and my point stands for the other Florida school, the Florida Gators. That's what you get for shoving out Dan Mullen. Like you have competent coaches who aren't like you have to understand your expectations. Like
I think we're okay. Let me respond. If you couldn't tell, if you're listening instead of watching, I was rubbing my hands and putting them to the fire because I could feel the heat coming off of Casen's takes. As I can a lot of the time. Let Casen cook. It's keeping my hands warm. That being said, I agree with most of what you said. Where I'll say this is like an eyes are too big for your stomach situation. And when I say that, I mean, I think if you're Florida State and you take last year, which Florida State fans have to come with the reality that last year, I don't want to say it was a bit of a fluke. I mean, you got the team you went undefeated. You didn't make a playoff. It is what it is. Flat out, I'm telling you right now, if it was a 12-team playoff, you wouldn't have won the national championship last year either. Your team wasn't better than the 4 teams in there. Maybe you're better than Washington. I don't know. Hard to say. But we'll never know, right? But the reality of the situation is you're not the caliber. I don't even necessarily want to say you're not the caliber. You're not the caliber of the top of the SEC. You might be the caliber of the middle of the SEC, because if we want to sit here and pretend like there's an SEC bias, right? I just think that it's a situation where Florida State fans see what they saw last year, get a dose of, okay, we're all the way back, and suddenly it's like, okay, we belong in the SEC. Whereas a fan base like Clemson's, who had sustained success there for a while, where they were very much like up there with like an Alabama in terms of consistency, I understand them more in the sense of if say we're not like right now, but a couple of years ago, it's like maybe we could roll in the SEC, because if you look across the board, I mean, obviously you're making it for football, but Clemson's very good at every sport as well. Florida State's very talented at other sports as well. They could definitely contend and say an SEC. I think this is definitely a situation of maybe this is I think this is like the industry's way of almost saying, why not stay where you are and build what we have here? Build onto the ACC, see if you can't be an element of making this up to the level of an SEC or Big Ten, or as close as you can, right? Because the reality of the situation is I don't think that we're still years away, I'm pretty sure. But this lawsuit situation is not going to end in their favor because of the can of worms it would open across the board and other realignment situations. So you're probably going to be, you and Clemson and the rest are going to be in the ACC for the longest time. I think this is almost a way of like, right now I'm sitting here thinking to myself, they play Memphis tomorrow. They'll probably win that game, but can't you see them going like 6-6 this year? And it's like one of those things where it's like, hey, here's your humble pie season. Everything where they are back to accepting, and whether they accept it or not, being fed the reality of everything you just said, right? And the reason I say that is because, especially with the last year where I was among many of them, I think a lot of Clemson fans are already hitting that reality. You know what I mean? Like, sure, they beat App State and everything. They look good and everything. But the reality of the situation is that most of them will be the first one to say, yeah, if you don't use the transfer portal, you're not going to beat Georgia. Like, they like the actual long-term Clemson fans who remember what Clemson was for the longest time and have been there for where they were mostly an ACC school. They were, one of the tenured ones, know how things usually are. So I think this is the beginning of Florida State returning to that. I will
Right,
say, I will
right.
say, I think Florida State got absolutely dogged for a week, mostly because of obviously the way last year ended, but also it's kind of brutal when you lose that way and you're the only game that weekend in week
Yeah.
0. Like you're like one of the only games, and it's like, well, I guess everyone's gonna dogpile on us for a week. Yeah. I mean, if I'm a Florida State fan, I'm gonna be like, well, we were the only get like because of the circumstance. Of course, you're gonna talk about us, right? So they're a bit of an easy target, at least a couple of weeks ago, right? But then you turn around and lose to Boston College, and it's like, okay, probably don't talk smack at all, Florida State fans, for a long time. So
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's just that there's a lot of things from last year that might actually end up being sort of an aberration
yeah,
compared to a suggestion of a future pattern. Like Florida State, DJ Uiagalelei has returned to Clemson form after having a pretty good season at Oregon State, and so he's exactly what we thought he was when he left Clemson. So there's that. But
so
my larger
we'll see.
point,
Mm-hmm.
but circling back, my larger point, uh, the best football team in Florida is the Miami Hurricanes.
Yeah,
They are miles better than the Gators. They are
Cam
miles better than
Ward,
the Seminoles.
they
Cam
destroyed
Ward looks,
they literally destroyed the
yeah,
Gators. Like
yeah.
it was
Cam Ward looks really good. I mean, we'll see how he looks against like bigger competition, but I mean, there was concern over, if he could keep up, that play style and stuff, and it
yeah.
looks like it's translated very well.
I think he was
So
quoted as saying something to the effect of the piped in noise we had at practice was louder than the swamp was today. And I'm like, with that Florida team, it sure was, man.
yeah,
I
I
totally
mean,
believe that.
look, I mean, and again, not so much the fans because I don't really. I mean, the Gators have had tremendous amount of success recently enough to justify the fans' expectations, but the university officials at Florida, I mean, you deserve this.
It's so tough, man.
I mean,
it's
like I
also
said, you pulled the trigger on firing Dan Mullen to then turn around and hire Billy Napier, who has no business being an SEC head coach.
right.
Along with the fact that,
but even when they did that, I don't necessarily think that they expected the SEC and realignment to take the turn it is now, where truly, you now the SEC is just harder now, and unfortunately, Florida enters at a situation where they're generally down as a football program, right? I did want to switch gears to a positive because I did want to go ahead and just say this. I think there are clear cut, fabulous 3 teams, Casen, right now
Mhm.
in college football. And when I say that, these are 3 teams who absolutely can win this playoff, can win a natty the way it is now. Can you name those 3?
I believe I can.
Go ahead.
We're looking at a program that looks to be continuing the dominance that they've had for several years. And unless otherwise proven, that you can expect them to be really competitive the entire season and win probably all their games. That would be the Georgia Bulldogs.
Kirby
Uh,
Smart. Kirby Smart's
and
boys probably also think that no one believes in them. So,
I mean,
that too.
and to be perfectly honest, they, as annoying as it is for a team like Georgia that won 2 titles and probably should have won a third last year, they're coming into the season with a chip on their shoulder because they got left out. I mean, they went out, laid an egg to Bama in the SEC title game and got left out, and so they did that. That's on them.
Mm-hmm.
But they come into this year actually as a team with something to prove. So
There you go.
I mean that's something. And
Who are
then
the other 2?
I would say the Ohio State Buckeyes,
I would agree.
which I got to see them play last week. Absolutely just boat raced Western Michigan. The offense is, I think, much better. And the third team would be a team that I greatly appreciate what they did in the state of Michigan last week. And they're led by very interesting character of Steve Sarkisian. That would be the University of Texas
And
Longhorns.
Well, and let's not forget Quinn Ewers, who is also a star of Fanville, the Dr. Pepper commercials.
Yeah, yeah.
He's on
Which,
those, which is fantastic.
yeah.
I will say
I'm glad a former Ohio State quarterback can beat Michigan at some point. Like that's great to see.
That is funny. I will say right now, if I was sitting here, the team out of the three of them that looks the best to me is Texas. That'll change obviously over time. Those are the three I would pick as well. And then we got the rest that are trying to figure it out. I have not seen enough yet to say if there's a valid number 4. I cannot sit here and say that there is one yet that has emerged. One little tidbit that I really wish that I would have been able to ask you guys a trivia, and I know we're spending a lot of time here. We'll get to the NFL in a moment. Casen, there are 3 head coaches who have won the national championship before, not necessarily in the playoff era. That with Saban departing, there are 3 head coaches that have won the national championship. Can you name the 3 that are actively coaching, I should say?
So active. Okay, so I mean it's Dabo and Kirby.
Correct. You did that immediately because we talked
And
about
then
them. The third one is interesting.
the third one's
fascinating.
I'm trying to think in my head.
I can I'll wait to see if you have any. I will say that this particular coach is active and did not win in the playoff era. This would have been the BCS era.
Okay.
But this was an interesting stat that I really wish I would have known prior to our show.
Mac Brown.
There it is. Good job, man. He was
the Texas head coach with Vince Young.
He absolutely was, and he's back in North Carolina for his second stint. Here's a lot of things people don't realize. Do you realize that Mac Brown has been the head coach there for like 15 or 16 years? Because
he was there for
back in the 80s, literally is when he started. He was there like for 12 years or something through up to the 90s. Went to Texas, had that whole period of time, was away from coaching for like a couple of years as an analyst, and now went back to North Carolina. Like I didn't realize how many years he has there as a
he's very old.
Yeah,
but he's
legit. He's a legend there.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. But that's that right. I'm glad you got that because if you're a casual fan under the age of 25, you probably wouldn't remember Kirby Smart's.
Well, right. I mean, I think Mac Brown.
Mac Brown's Texas team.
I think Mac Brown retired from Texas. I'd say 10 years ago. Right, because I think he retired, then they hired Charlie Strong.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that was about, I think 2013, 14-ish.
Yeah, and like the reason all of this is like relevant is cool because it's the first time Texas has been like back since Mac Brown was.
Yeah.
So, and when I say back, I mean like contending for a national championship. So, anyway, that's just a little tidbit out there. I just thought you'd appreciate that. I actually learned that from a different podcast, and I was like, oh, that's a cool trivia question. Is it time to move on to the NFL, Casen? Do you need to talk about any other college football items?
I will just say I'll just leave it at a very short note. Michigan is going to be awful this year. They look awful. They are awful, and we'll see what ends up happening with the NCAA investigation. I'll just leave it at that.
We'll see what happens there. I'm not convinced that they're going to be awful because I think every team's going to look awful against Texas this year. That being said, the sample size just isn't big enough for me to sit here and say, oh, Michigan's going to be awful. I don't believe that.
They don't have a quarterback. I mean, they just don't.
They may not, but I mean, when you say awful, like, do you mean awful, or do you mean awful in terms of Michigan standard awful? Where they're like a 3 or 4 loss team, because that's still pretty good.
I mean they're awful as far as like they won the Natty last year, everybody left, and they're probably going to win maybe 7 games. Like,
yeah, that's still pretty good. But it'll be bad by Michigan. So anyway, we'll see what happens. The NFL, we didn't do a formal preview of the league. Quite frankly, we would have. I think we'll probably bring a guest back in here to discuss it later this year. I feel like we owe that because usually we would bring someone like that in. Given the circumstances of myself, we didn't. NFL stories, just we are literally a week in, and we are a week and a game in, considering it's Friday that we're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a game last night between your Bills. I'm kidding, your Bills. The Bills demolished the Dolphins. That was the first week of the game. And by the time you hear this show, that will still be the only game that has happened prior to Sunday. Whether you're saying that, listening to this on Sunday morning. I'm just gonna. Should I just rip the Band-Aid off now, Casen? Because
Yeah.
it seems like seemingly the story, one of the stories of opening week was just how bad the Browns looked, how bad Deshaun's playing. I mean, there's nothing we could say at this point that hasn't already been said, and I'm not gonna make this a dog pile on you. I'm more or less just like, look, it's been a week, everything's been said. It's 1 week into the season. I will also say that, but I just feel like it's a low hanging fruit story. So take it away, my friend.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Don't all jump on it at once.
I mean, I don't really have anything else to say. I mean, beyond the fact that, like, as long as that quarterback is on the roster, we're not going to be good.
Hmm.
I mean, he's awful. I mean, he's not good. He can't throw. He can't play. And I mean, I think they're essentially forced to play him. I don't know why. I mean, I don't know what they can and can't do. It's just at this point, I'd pay him $60 million to sit at home. I mean, because
Man.
they're like, you cannot tell me that Jameis wouldn't be better.
You
Like,
know,
you cannot tell me that.
what's interesting is that I heard something like this said this week, but I wanted to kind of expand upon it. This is a very unique situation in that, especially, I'll just use the betting example. It's like watching a very stupid bet that you made that you thought in the moment was genius, but now you're reaping that. Now you're reaping that, but it's actually one of those situations where the bet was actually financially irresponsible. And now you may or may not be able to, pay groceries, do something like that. You may or may not have. And I'm really not trying to make like a joke out of what is a serious situation, but like it's kind of how it feels like they all hedged their bets on this particular player, Deshaun Watson, being like he was at Texas. With everything that's happened, with just off the field situation, he mentally wasn't going to be the same player anyway. And it's one of those situations where I don't know if we've ever seen this. We literally haven't seen it in NFL history because it's like up until Dak recently, last week. It was the most expensive contract ever. This is the first time where I truly see a team that's an actual hostage of its own business decision. You know what I mean? It's actually like if they I remember even at the time someone saying if they don't win a Super Bowl with him, they essentially just paid all that money to essentially put a ball and chain around both legs. And I was like, I mean, yeah, but like when that was said, I wasn't expecting him to be this bad. I don't think anyone was.
I
That was before last season. So
I will just say, I mean, I don't know. I could be wrong, but the only thing that even makes this entire situation make sense to me is that this trade was orchestrated and forced by the ownership.
well, and there you go.
Because I from what I can tell, and from what a lot of people in the Cleveland fandom and media sort of insinuate, Stefanski doesn't like him. He leaves him out in garbage time on purpose. Like, what other reason would there be if you don't care if he's healthy or not?
True.
Like, so Stefanski doesn't like him. And this is the only really awful thing I've ever seen AB I've ever seen. Like, this is the only bad deal I've ever seen AB make. And to me, that suggests that it wasn't his trade.
Right.
That or it was a trade that he didn't like, but Jimmy forced him to make it. Like, the only thing that even makes sense to me is that Jimmy went to them and said, "Fine, I won't hold you accountable for this trade. I want it done. I'll pay the money. Like, it's my money anyway. I want this superstar on my team because I like I do not understand why he would do that, but that is the only thing in my head that makes sense because neither one of these two people seem to even like the guy.
Well, and
So I don't
when he
understand.
doesn't even seem to want to be there. I mean,
Exactly.
in a lot of ways,
He doesn't want to. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere but
I don't
on
know
that
if
field on Sunday.
I don't know if anyone has made this comparison yet, but Deshaun Watson has given me Cutler vibes. Like Jay Cutler, like the Bears trudged him out there for years when it literally looked like he was just miserable, which by all accounts he basically was. And it's like in that situation, they weren't forced like they are in this situation, definitely to keep putting him out there and seeing if he'll get any better. I said to someone literally today, Friday, that is the case, in that even if he was good, I would not like this deal that he's on. I'd be like, you know what I mean? Like unless we're winning the Super Bowl every single year, why did we have to pay this much to this player? Even if he was like, okay, maybe if it was Mahomes, but even then, it's like, can we structure a deal that's not hamstringing us in other ways on the cap? Like, to where if something were to happen, we're not completely, in a bad spot financially.
Yeah.
That's I said that to that, like literally, even if he was good right now, I'd be like, I don't like the deal at all. So I think it's easy for me to sit here as a Steeler fan and dogpile, but I'm not really even going to sit here and do that and say that I agree with you. It's one of those things where if this does not work out and the ownership doesn't, and all these guys, like it's another clean house situation in Cleveland, I'm going to be sitting here saying all of those, that might have been the best Browns regime that they've had in my life. And you forced them to do this. Meanwhile, there's someone who I feel great for, and it's Baker Mayfield. I'm dead serious. I'm sorry to say, talk about a guy who got out of there and did his thing. I mean, sometimes you just gotta, call a spade, say what something is. The man destroyed us in the playoffs, us as in the Steelers, and I could not be happier that he is not with the Browns right now. So, yeah.
So I guess that's the thing, and that
So if all those guys get fired, I'm going to be like, well, all the ownership's fault. I'm with you.
I mean, yeah, I mean, 1,000%. I mean, if there's an argument to be made to fire Andrew Berry, if it was his decision, I mean, if he was the one behind that trade,
absolutely right.
That is justified. I don't think there's any universe in which Stefanski should take blame for this.
No,
because like we saw what he can do with Joe Flacco. So it's like clearly he's limited by the talent on the field. Like there is an issue with the personnel that he can't change.
And that was awesome last year. The Flacco train, man.
And so
led them to the playoffs.
And so in light of some other things as well that have been brought up in the news regarding the quarterback.
Right.
It's just like it just feels like a death spiral until this contract is over.
Right, and which keep stick a pin in that, because who's to say that this contract couldn't be over much sooner?
We'll see how that goes, but essentially I did the joke last year with the wheel as a Seahawks fan.
I did ask, okay, for some context, I did ask Casen like a couple of days ago, hey Casen, are you going to pick a new team to follow because you're just so disgusted with the Browns like the Seahawks last year? And
yeah, I mean, essentially what I've just sort of landed on is I'm just going to have to allow myself to no longer care about the franchise until he's gone. And so that's just sort of the place I'm at emotionally, in that until we're free of this burden and this person, I just can't pay attention to it.
I'll say this. We're right. It's like it's almost like, sounds like it's almost like a mental health thing. Like I've even said, it's funny because that's a good transitional point, because I texted you and other friends that in no way was I excited for the start of the NFL season. And that's actually it had nothing to do with, I would have jumped on here and done a preview show with you all, but I was so not excited just because I'm a Steelers fan, and what is there to be excited about? I'm excited for us to go 9-8 again and struggle on offense. We beat the Falcons the Steelers beat the Falcons last week with nothing but field goals and look like the exact same team. They're not going to win the Super Bowl. Like at least with college, I don't know. There's something about the college game that I always love more, but I was dead serious when I said 90% of the time, it's just me being mad at the TV if my team isn't doing well. And as a Steeler fan, to say that, I'm sure some people are like, Kellan, you're such a spoiled Steeler fan. I'm like, yeah, I was, but like even Ben was there, and we only were Super Bowl contenders when he was like young. You know, there were other years where I
Mhm.
just watched a team that had way too much talent squander it all. And so it's sort of like, I don't know. This was the first year where I was really like, I could not watch an NFL game at all this year and be fine. Now, I'm not going to do that because we have this show, and of course we're going to talk about this stuff. But I was saying, like, at least I'm in a situation. I'm in a situation. Casen sounds like, folks, that he would rather be in my situation, even.
I mean,
You
yeah,
sound
no,
like
I
a
mean,
you
like,
sound like a Pirates fan in August, my friend,
yeah,
or
I mean,
September. It's like, well, that's over.
I'm sitting here at the point where I wish my quarterback was still Baker Mayfield. I mean, it's
Mm.
just that's just where we're at. I mean, I mean, I don't know. So anyway, this
Well,
brings me back to
the one thing I will say is
essentially,
there's got to be some satisfaction in people getting their comeuppance that made this happen. Like, it's not at the expense of your fandom, but when things all just go badly the way everyone said that they were, and it's like, oh, we deserve, well, unfortunately in this situation, maybe the people who deserve it won't get that, but who knows? But
yeah. Um. So anyway, with that being said,
you want to
I'm
switch
going
Go
to
ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. Are you going to spin the
I'm
wheel?
my I'm not going to spin the wheel. I'm going to just lean into it and just become probably the most obnoxious Chiefs fan on this show.
No, you're not doing that.
And
You're
we're
absolutely.
gonna go ahead and do that.
That's
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
I actually want to back up to the reality where you were still rooting for the Browns. I don't like that at all. I hate that, actually. Um, if you actually do that, that would be very annoying, and that could actually be very entertaining for
No,
our
I mean, I look, I have always liked them. I mean, I love Andy Reid.
we're not doing this. We're not gonna. No, you haven't.
No,
No, no,
no,
no.
no, no, of course. Like, I mean, I'm just saying, like, I was rooting for them in that Super Bowl that they had the first time they won
Well,
in
right
20. I mean,
before they became the Patriots.
yeah, I mean, I think they're very entertaining to watch. Like their
Well, yeah,
play
they
style
are.
is fun.
Listen.
And
Travis Kelsey's on my fantasy team. You're a fan of Taylor Swift. Hey, it makes sense. But that being said, we're not. We also are not anti-Chiefs on this show either, though. So,
I mean, I'm gonna choose to I'm gonna choose to be happy, and so I'm gonna bandwagon the Chiefs. That's how we're gonna go.
I will hop on here and say that my Super Bowl pick legitimately would have been the Chiefs if we had a legit like preview show. Um,
Yeah.
and legit like them three-peating is going to be my pick until someone proves me otherwise. Because who's going to beat them? The
Yeah,
Lions,
I
maybe.
mean,
I don't know.
I don't think I don't remember him really doing much last week, but Hollywood Brown is on IR now. I don't think that really matters because Xavier Worthy is exactly who we thought he would be. So again, thank you, Bills, for letting the Chiefs get Xavier Worthy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thanks for nothing,
another
Buffalo
Tyreek Hill,
Bills in general.
but
Thanks.
yeah.
Appreciate it.
So I don't know what else we want to go through here.
Well, I think we.
The only other thing I want to talk about are the Jets. Jets are still average. Aaron looked bad. LOL. So any hype on the Jets, probably was not warranted. But and then Caleb looked disappointing.
You were saying about Caleb?
Yeah. Caleb looked not great. I mean, first game, I mean, there's a lot of, runway for him to get better. It's just first pick, you expect more.
The Bears, though,
And
they're like the first team in NFL history in a long time to score that many points, like without an offensive touchdown, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully for Caleb, he has like they are putting him in a good situation because like the defense is good. They do have weapons to help him. So it's just I just think that, I mean, starting game one as a rookie is not ideal. So we'll just have to see if he can get better. But
he's also like the fourth the fourth like first overall pick starting quarterback ever to like start and win the actual season debut or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
It's like him,
yeah,
Elway, two other legends, and him. Which like say what you will, but that's not nothing.
yeah.
Like
That is
that's I
true.
mean,
That is true.
in a world where like that's just doesn't happen, like that's pretty wild. Like that was said. I was literally watching. It's one of those things where I was watching one game end and the next one was beginning, and they were showing the end of that game, and it was like one of the stats they popped up as everyone was like going to handshake and all that. I was like, wow, that's impressive. Um, let's see. Yes, that was the case. Um, I wanted to. Oh, what was the other takeaway from week one? I already talked about the Steelers. Don't want to get into that. They're still the same team. Uh,
Oh,
the Go
I
ahead.
will say that this just happened. Uh, it sounds like the 49ers are thinking about putting Christian McCaffrey on IR.
Yes, and it looks like he's definitely going to miss.
So
That happened since we've been recording. He's not going to be playing week two. So,
that is that I mean that is a lot of fantasy implications because
oh
I
yeah,
know he went one overall for a lot of people.
yep.
Um,
There
so
was one other thing. I thought it was a bit of a fluke, but quite frankly, Casen, the Bengals lost to a bad Patriots team. Um, Fascinating.
yeah,
Also considering that was another interesting thing when Robert Kraft was in the locker room, kind of addressing the team that like he didn't get to give like the game ball for like Belichick for his first win until like several weeks into the season, and it was ironically against the Bengals. So I mean that's the stuff like that is kind of amazing. Uh, that's this past week, but go
I
ahead, go
mean
ahead.
it for I'll just say I mean for what we assume is a bad Patriots team.
Right,
The issue with the Bengals was exactly what we thought would happen, which is their receiving squad is Jamar and nobody.
right.
And so they just shut down Jamar and Joe Burrow had nothing to do, he had nothing he could do.
I'm also going to just flat out here and say this that the Bengals the further we get away from the Bengals Super Bowl year was an absolute fluke. Like I just that is not going to happen with Joe Burrow there, at least the way the Bengals are currently structured. Through kind of no fault of his own, I do think through the fault of the organization, definitely. Um, I also think that they got a lot of early success there that they weren't expecting.
Yeah.
I also think that that only happened because that was the one year the Chiefs kind of messed around and couldn't beat the Bengals.
Mm-hmm.
Since then they can, so it's kind of like I think what we're seeing now is the Bungles returning to the Bungles, but again, it's week one. It's like you don't want to react, bud. It's like the Pat McAfee show hashtag. It's like but
Well, speaking
yeah.
of, we'll find out because they're going to Arrowhead on Sunday. So
Yes.
we'll find out.
So yeah, you boys, the Chiefs. I did want to address one other game. Vikings look good. That was the other one I saw. Now I don't know if it was that the Vikings look good or the Giants are just terrible. Probably more the second
I
thing.
would lean towards the latter.
Yeah.
Because we know JJ McCarthy is not
Right.
is out for the year.
Right. And again, we didn't have a preview show, but that is one of those things where brutal. We'll wish him a speedy recovery because it's like, you just won the national championship in college football and you were a first round pick, obviously. And now it's like you don't exist for a year,
So I mean Sam Darnold I mean was decent, but I think again, I mean you want to talk about awful contracts. I mean Daniel Jones.
Yeah. In other news, the Lions had an impressive victory in overtime over the Rams on Sunday Night Football, kind of continuing from where they left off. I do think the Lions are going to be definitely the team to beat in that division again this year. And yeah, the Niners picked up also kind of where they left off, and the Jets. You mentioned the Jets kind of when I was fiddling with my mic, but I mean,
Yeah, I was just saying that Aaron looks like he hasn't played in a very long time and he's very old and I think they'll so I would be willing to say welcome to New York, Shadur Sanders.
wow. It's interesting because Schefter and others were talking about how the shorter you make preseason, you're just going to make the first like 4 weeks of the regular season terrible for offenses, which is true, right? Um, I think people would rather the games count, but that is the one trade off you see. I do want to shift gears because your favorite team, the Buffalo Bills, is 2-0 after this situation. They're the one team. But the story coming up, right, exactly. I'm not implicating much there with who they've played so far, the Cardinals. And the Dolphins win last night, though, was exasperated, which should have been a better game, but it was Thursday Night Football.
We'll address that conversation as well.
Do you want to go ahead and talk about it now?
Yeah.
Like the one thing, like the story in the NFL as of today, Friday, Saturday, going into the weekend, Tua Tagovailoa goes out with yet another head injury that he collided in a regular football play. He was running, obviously, out of the pocket, running downfield. He actually collides, ironically, with Damar Hamlin, and he gets another potentially very severe concussion.
Yeah, so the irony of Tua's head making contact with Damar Hamlin's chest.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was one of those where the internet,
yeah,
I'm like, well, that of course that
yeah,
happened, right?
yeah, unstoppable force versus immovable object on that one, but
Yeah,
I mean, from what I could tell, that was on Tua. I mean, Tua dove head first into the guy's chest,
right. I mean,
and yeah, I mean, Tua. It was a very scary situation
yeah.
because Tua again displayed a lot of the concerning like symptoms that he had last year and the last time that happened before that. And so this is like the third horrifically scary head injury in his very short career so far.
Yeah.
And so there was talk immediately from last night on like where does this leave him as a person? Like, I mean, at some point you have to just cut your losses and say, I want to survive.
Well,
Like,
it's almost, I actually said to someone today, and I was like, that would be a good line for the podcast. It's almost like if he got like word from the Dolphins owner that his whole contract would be paid out, whether it's immediately or over a certain period of time, it's almost worth it to walk away now. Like, who cares? Like,
mhm.
you did it. You were a starting quarterback in the NFL. No, you don't win a Super Bowl, but like, get out while your head's intact, man. Like, because it's only gonna be downhill from here, and you got the rest of your life. I think there was that soundbite that said that Mike McDaniel said something to him to the effect of, "You're the starting quarterback of your family," and it's like, yeah, I mean, like, I joking aside, you do wonder at a certain point where it's like, I said if I were him, I'd almost really be considering it and saying, hey, given the circumstances. Now, obviously, when Luck left, that was a situation where Irsay paid him out, out of like courtesy, like he was going to pay him out because of what he meant to the franchise and stuff. That was an irregular thing to do, obviously, but it does make you wonder how long you got to keep doing this, just when you've had this many head injuries. And it is interesting that we're cognizant as a society about it now, because if this was even 10 years ago, I don't think that this would warrant as many. Um, I even think back to the stigma when Crosby had multiple head injuries, had multiple concussions early in his career. And there was a period of time in Pittsburgh when it was genuinely wondered whether or not he was coming back based on his concussions, which thank God he did, because that would have been a career cut short, obviously. But this is one of those situations where I feel like kind of um, this kind of reaction is not what we would have seen in the past. And where there's this many people saying, hey, like, kidding aside, you might want to call it quits, man. And legitimately, overwhelmingly, no one would blame you. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
no one would blame you at all. Publicly, you would actually look very good if you did. Staying is one thing, but if you did, am I wrong? Like, I'd be sitting here
No,
saying,
I
like,
mean,
no,
I
I
think,
get it. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think I mean, I'm sure there'll be a section of the Dolphins fan base
that would be
that
mad,
will
right?
be, yeah, but I mean, at the same time, yeah, like you have to make that decision.
Well, even Dolphins fans, I mean, he's been so banged up anyway that it's like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, maybe it is time to move on. But anyway, uh, yeah. So that's really all I got as far as the Tua story. Do you have anything to say going into this week, going out of last week
Um,
that hasn't been said already?
no, I mean, I think we've talked a lot about it, so I think that pretty much covers covers
Cool.
most of it.
I don't really have many of the weeks because we've been here a while already. My upset of the week goes to NIU over Notre Dame, no question about it. Um, my other upset of the week, I'll give to Pac-12 against the odds. Yeah,
Mhm.
seriously, against going away. I'm happy about that. I'm going to keep it positive for the opening week. There was just so much to get to and so much we needed to get out that I didn't have a semblance of putting it. I kind of tacked it on to the lineup there. Anything, man?
Um, I'll say I'll just say mistake of the week. Goes to a former tight end for the Broncos. We'll leave it at that. If you know, you know. Hall of Fame tight end from the Broncos.
Oh boy.
Well, we'll
Yep.
we'll leave it at that. Look,
Yep.
if you know, you know.
We will indeed leave it at that. That's a solid of the week. Good to be back. I mean, honestly, I was one of those situations where I'm not when we're not on this show. I genuinely miss it. I did want to kind of somberly end the show by acknowledging something else that happened since our last show. And we don't have to go into details because it's been a few weeks now, but the passing of Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau in literally, and the reason I wanted to bring it up, Casen, is because it greatly affected the community that you're a part of, and quite frankly, we have friends of the show that are Blue Jackets fans, and beyond just like the hockey fans in general, just the tragic loss of life, and I just wanted to actually formally acknowledge it on the show is all.
Yeah, yeah, no, it definitely it's a horrifically sad story. Just with the context of the family, where they were, what they were doing,
It is.
and the timing, and um, very sad for everybody involved.
It is,
And
and there's and
and I'll just leave it with
yeah.
just call an Uber, guys. I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah. Call an Uber
there's
and
there's never. I mean, from what just came out today, um, the driver tested 0.087, so barely over the legal limit, but clearly impacted enough by that.
yeah,
So just
agreed.
call an Uber, call a friend,
And
walk.
and in that same note, I would add Casen, call your loved ones, tell people you love them. I'm a big I thought about that and I said, if we acknowledged it on the show and I wanted to discuss this, I wanted to say this. I'm really big on, we need to do a better job collectively of giving people their flowers while they're here, you know? And in a manner of speaking, I mean that more like in a phrase, but acknowledging the people in your life that you love very much. I love you, my friend. I love that we're able to hop on here and talk about sports, but beyond that, as a friend, as a loved one, and because you just never know how much time you have. And so my thoughts, prayers, well wishes go to everyone beyond just family, just quite frankly anyone who knew these two young men. And they'll be greatly missed, especially as we near the hockey season, but every day beyond that. So
Absolutely.
to close the show, on that note, I've had a lot of things happen in my personal life that are, causes of celebration, and think great things that have happened. It's been those who know and who would tune in for the most part would know how, quite frankly, emotional it's been the last 2 months of my life, mostly in a positive way, but also just when you transition again. It's also on keeping it on a serious note of like where you look back to where we were. I mean, it's funny because Casey, you and I started this. You and I started this show as a side project, and it's cool to see one how it's grown, but also what's happened in both of our lives in the positive direction since then. And I just thank everyone so much for listening, your love, support of both on and off the air of what we got going on in life, and wouldn't be at this point without yourself, Casen, and all the people listening and watching. So love and thank you all. Just wanted to say that as well.
Absolutely, brother.
Cool, cool. So on that note, it's very good to be back. It's good to be talking to you all again. Any final thoughts, my friend?
Go Chiefs.
Oh, I'll add go all the teams that we know and love and root for. You know who you are, even through best of times and worst of times. We will see you next time for sure. This is Kellan,
This is Casen.
and we'll see you as always at the next stop.